What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well. And Stat Account is at it again. Stat Account is posting more charts, putting up more data, and making me think about things. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at one of his latest chart drops that he posted. I think this was yesterday, concerning offensive tackle play in the NFL during the 2024 season. And I want to talk about something that I'm noticing here. So this chart concerns offensive tackle play. So this is Charles Cross, Abe Lucas, and because he actually played enough during the 2024 season at tackle, Stone Forsythe. And there's some interesting observations to draw from this chart. So first, let's talk about the chart itself real quick. This chart is designed to show how effective a tackle is on true passing sets at pass protection. The horizontal axis is pressure percentage allowed per PFF. This is just a simple evaluation of how often a player allows pressure on a true passing set. And the vertical is blown block percentage, which is the percentage of time where a player blows his block on a true pass set. And by the way, true passing sets, that's a concept I haven't really talked about on this channel before. It basically takes every passing play and then throws out certain ones that could be deceptive. Play action, screens, and rollouts. They don't want to look at plays like that when they're evaluating something like that, because what happens on that play in terms of allowing or not allowing pressure might not have anything to do with the player. It might be by design. Like, think about a screen pass where you have a player that's not even trying to block the player in front of them because they're trying to get upfield so they can block for the screen. So it kind of removes those plays from the pool, and it only looks at the other passing plays. That's what a true pass set is. So it's a better way and a more stable way to evaluate pressure rate and blown block rate, etc. Because sometimes something will look like a pressure when it was by design, and you don't want to punish a player for that. Now, you can see that if you look at the red lines here, the dotted red lines here, the average pressure percentage allowed for a tackle in the NFL is just a little bit higher than 9%, and the average blown block rate is somewhere around 6.2% approximately. So that gives us a little bit of a baseline. And the reason why this chart caught my attention is, first of all, you would expect the line, kind of the correlation line, to run pretty much down the middle here. Like, you would expect it to maybe start somewhere around here and then go up through this. I don't know if you guys, well, okay, okay, there we go. I don't know why my mouse wasn't there, but it would follow a line somewhere around here and go through there. So you would expect the correlation to be pretty smooth, and it is. If you look at this chart, there's a strong correlation between blown block rate and pressure rate. But there are 3 Seahawks on this chart, and all 3 of them are being pushed up from that trend line. They have blown block rates that are much lower than you would expect given their pressure allowed rate. Let's start with Stone Forsythe, because I'm not really going to say too much about that part. Stone Forsythe played the whole year out of position. He's not a very good player to begin with. He's not going to be on the team in 2025 unless he comes back on a veteran minimum deal to be a backup. And ultimately, he did the best that he could. So I'm not hating here. He had, by a wide margin, the highest pressure rate of any qualifying tackle in the league, about 20%. He allowed pressure on about 20% of his true pass sets, which is really bad. His blown block rate was above average. It was somewhere around, what would this be, like a little more than 8%, which is bad. But we can also see it's nowhere near the worst. We can find probably a dozen guys who had a higher blown block rate, and yet his blown block rate didn't really correlate that well to his pressure rate. And then let's look at Abe Lucas here. Abe Lucas, I don't know if you guys can see him. He's right here next to Taylor Decker and Caleb McGarry and Rob Havenstein. Keep in mind, Lucas played part of the season when he was recovering from the injury, so the numbers are not going to be completely indicative of his abilities, but you can see that his blown block rate is actually below average, by which I mean lower than average, which is good. His blown block rate is somewhere around 5.5, 5.7, I would estimate, based on this chart, and that's beating the average. So he blows blocks at a rate lower than you would expect, and yet his pressure rate is higher than the average. His pressure rate is about 12 to 12.5%. Well, excuse me. His pressure rate's around 11, 11.2, 11.3%. So a decent amount above the average. The average is about, 9% approximately. Maybe a little bit higher than 9, slightly. So yeah, that's interesting. And then we get to Charles Cross here. And this is the main reason why I'm making this video. Charles Cross has one of the lowest blown block percentages in the NFL this recent season. In fact, the only players that had a lower blown block rate on true pass sets than Cross were the 2 Buffalo tackles, Zach Tom, Maitaya, Brian O'Neill, Tristan Wirfs, and Lane Johnson. So we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys who blow blocks at a lower rate than Cross. And yet, despite that, his pressure rate is slightly above average. It's slightly above 10%. And these two things shouldn't be happening like this, right? You should not have 3 players that have good blown block rates, but poor pressure rates. And I think this really goes back to the ineffectiveness of Ryan Grubb as an offensive coordinator. The fact that Charles Cross, based on his blown block rate, and I understand that there are plays in the NFL where you don't blow a block but still give up pressure. So it's not like there's going to be a 1-to-1 correlation, but there should be strong correlation. He should be over here. He should be living over here with the elite of the elite, and he's not. And why might that be? Well, some people might say strength. He needs to get a little bit stronger. He needs to muscle up a little bit so that way when he doesn't blow the block, he's able to maintain the block. That might be part of the problem. But I also think what you're seeing here is just the effect of having an offensive coordinator who loves his long developing passing plays, loves his straight dropbacks, loves his shotgun with no attempt to trick the defense into thinking the play might be a running play. And I think what this is really all about is the inability of Ryan Grubb to put his players in a good position. And I feel like this little line that you can draw well above the correlation line that you would draw for the rest of the league highlights that. If you're not blowing blocks at an extremely high rate, you shouldn't be giving up pressure at an extremely high rate. So the other thing that I think this highlights is the necessity to pay Charles Cross now while he's going to be less than top of the market. This is something that might depress his value a little bit. And I'm trying to get in on that because next year with a new OC, if Charles Cross's play can start to be matched by his actual pressure rate allowed, he's going to cost a lot more money. And based on what I'm seeing here, the odds of that happening are pretty darn high. Like, this is just true pass set, but let's think about this for a second here. You got Charles Cross. Let's go to his Pro Football Focus page here real quick. 47 pressures allowed in 17 games in 2024. That's about 2 3/4 pressures a game. So 2 3/4, 2.75 pressures per game. Tristan Wirfs, first team All-Pro left tackle this year, considered to be the best tackle in the NFL. Pressures, 12. He only played 16 games, so we're talking about 3/4 of a pressure per game, right? 0.75. So Charles Cross is allowing, on average, an extra 2 pressures per game compared to Wirfs. That's like more than 3 times, more than 3.5 times the pressure allowed of Wirfs. And yet, His blown block rate is almost identical to Wirf's. Cross is sitting here at, what would this be? Something like 3.4. Maybe Wirf's is somewhere around 3.3. Like, very similar. So I think this is just another way of highlighting how the offense didn't make sense. There's a lot that goes into this. Some of it, again, is on Cross. He needs to sustain blocks better once he doesn't blow the block. And I think that might come with him adding a little bit of extra muscle this offseason, which you would expect to happen anyway just because of age. Remember, he's still a very young player. But I think what this really points out is if you run the ball more, you run the ball effectively, you incorporate play action, you do more under center, and you just try to balance the offense and make things make sense. Charles Cross should be among the elite left tackles in this league. And he's not because he's being put in these really, really bad situations. So I just wanted to go over this because I know there are some Seahawks fans that are not high on Charles Cross. They look at the number of pressures he's allowed and they say, well, he's actually bad. And then some people look at his pressure percentage allowed and they say, oh, he's average, right? Because the pressure percentage is right around average. But what I would say is that if you apply context and you think about the ways in which Ryan Grubb makes life harder for his players, that's the best way I can put it. Ryan Grubb, his offense made Geno Smith, made DK Metcalf, made Charles Cross, made Abe Lucas. All these guys have to play games on the hardest difficulty. Things start to make sense, and how good these players are starts to fall into line. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks.